to the lecture. Today's kind of a time crunch, so I try to move through it quickly, but feel free to ask questions along the way because it's just a lot of flashing slides of pictures of plants. But anyway, thank you guys for your homework submissions, those of you who were able to submit your homework. We're going to use those pictures at the end and like maybe look at some photos and do some plant ID regarding the photos that you submitted after we've looked at a bunch of photos today. So today is about plant identification. We're going to try to go through a bunch of native plants that are really commonly found in the kind of landscaping scene. So it's not like a naturalist course where we're like getting down to the nitty gritty of different types of plants you find in the wild. These are the ones that we commonly see in gardens and that work in gardens and you find in nurseries and things like that. My earbud's really falling out. Sorry, guys. I had to play with it. And what else? Oh, if you were able to pick up your flashcards from Theodore Payne, I would grab those now. They're really going to be helpful to kind of follow along. You don't need them. I mean, it'd be nice to have them, but either way, grab them now. And then lastly, before I get into this slide, there's a handout associated with this class. It's called Easy Native Plants for Southern California. And it's just a great list of over like 24 native plants that are considered easy. So they're not very fussy and they thrive relatively reliably in most gardens. So they can take kind of your standard garden conditions. And they're great for like newbies to native plants or, a garden that you just maybe know the client is unfamiliar with natives or they're worried about killing their plants. You could start with the easy plants on that easy list. And I will give a shout out to the plants that we go over that are on the list as much as I can remember. But anyway, getting into a little intro, but then we'll get into the plants themselves. So hopefully you guys had a chance to read over the handout from last class, which is kind of like intro to native plants. And it really goes into like, what are native plants? How are they different from naturalized plants and drought tolerant and all those things? But in a nutshell, just so we're kind of on the same page, they're basically the plants that have existed in California prior to European contact. So these are plants that have been here and evolved in California for millennia, really long periods of time. So just because you've seen a photo from like 1890s of LA and you saw a palm tree in it doesn't mean that it's native just because it's 100 years old or more. This is like thousands of years. So really long time they've evolved for in these spaces. And because of that, they've had time to adapt to their conditions, meaning like their weather, the soil organisms, that can be the microbiology like the fungi and the bacteria in the soil, but also any other insects. They are co-evolving with those and animals and even the humans, so they have co-evolved for over a long period of time with a bunch of different organisms, and that's formed a really complex network of relationships with these different organisms and even other plants. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yes, of course, other plants they've co-evolved with as well. So they're really adapted to their locale, like each locale, because we know California is very diverse. It's really different Northern California from Southern California and even every little kind of micro pocket in there. So there's tons of diversity also in the types of plants we see throughout California. And also you might see particular groupings of plants and they're usually adapted to similar environments and they have kind of co-evolved together. And so those same plants that we see together, we call those like plant communities. And those plant communities basically are plants that grow together because they've adapted to that environment together. And we're going to talk about some plant communities right now. One thing though about all California native plants, regardless of plant community, is they are all subject to our Mediterranean climate, which is basically characterized by the warm, dry summers and our cool, rainy winters. So all throughout California, all organisms are experiencing that weather pattern, the warm, dry summers and the cool, rainy winters. So maybe in Northern California, they get more rain and we get a little less, but it's still the same pattern, dry and warm in the summer and cool and wet in the winter. And so that's a Mediterranean climate region is what we call that. There's only 5 other in the world, Mediterranean climate regions. So sometimes when you find a plant that's not native, but it's labeled as drought tolerant or California friendly, a lot of times they come from these other Mediterranean regions, like Mediterranean climate regions, I should say. But they're subject to the same type of weather pattern: dry summers, dry, hot summers, and the cool, wet winters. So something like a lot of our plants, like ice plant, comes from South Africa, and it works really well here, but it's not native. So native plants, the more local the plant is to the region, like hyper local it is, the more likely it is to support wildlife. So that's kind of the benefit of natives over drought tolerant or California friendly. So I'm going to talk about a few of the plant communities. These are not all of them. There are many. There's like dozens of plant community types. I'm just going to go over a few that are kind of the more common ones, and also the ones where you find most of our plants in the garden setting come from. Oh, and also knowing a plant community can be really helpful for maintenance and even design, in that plants that grew up together, they kind of do well together. So for example, if they're all in the same plant community, you can kind of zone them the same way in terms of irrigation or placement. That's how you could maybe use it. So for example, if you have like a really wet spot in a garden, you might want to pick a riparian plant community, or even zone like the irrigation zone, make that like, that's a wetter zone. So you can set the irrigation for a little bit more frequent waterings, because that's like your kind of wetter riparian plants. So what was I trying to say? Grouping plant community plants together, even in your garden setting, or even it can be useful. So starting with coastal sage scrub. Coastal sage scrub is basically characterized by its kind of shorter, low growing plants and very aromatic. So kind of shorter and aromatic plants, and they are, as the name suggests, coastal sage scrub, typically it's near the coast. They're always by the coast. So there's these short growing, kind of smelly, fragrant plant communities. And they are very threatened due to development, because obviously humans love to build homes and make developments along the coast. So it is a very threatened community. But some of the members would be Artemisia, which is very fragrant, Baccharis, buckwheat, Encelia, Sambucus, gumweed, or salvias, another smelly one, deerweed, and mix of all of them are going to kind of have a mix of annuals and bulbs usually, but that's kind of a general composite of the coastal sage scrub. The next kind of most common one is the chaparral, and chaparral is usually a lot thicker, like more dense, almost impassable, very difficult to get through, and much more woody, woodier than the coastal sage scrub. So, and because of that, it burns more frequently. It has evolved to have a fire cycle within. A lot of the plants require fire to germinate, so they are accustomed to fire. And but now with the increased human population, the fire frequency is higher than normal. But they have evolved to deal with fire, let's say, and survive it. In fact, indigenous people maintained and still maintain their landscapes in the chaparral communities using controlled burns. So fire isn't always a bad thing. What was I going to say about this? Oh yeah, this is more inland typically, like I was saying, a bit woodier. And I like to think of it as like kind of like a mini woodland forest, because it's just kind of like there's like mini kind of woodier trees and kind of forest things. But what was I going to say? Oh, chaparral, right. There is like, if you speak Spanish, there's like chaparrito is like a little short thing. And I kind of think of it like that, like a mini woodland forest. It's like a chaparrito version of the oak woodland or of a forest. And then Brenda actually shared with me last time that actually the word chaps, those like pants that cowboys wear when they're riding horses to protect their legs from literally chaparral, that word chaps comes from chaparreras, which were the name of the pants that they that's what they call them in Spanish. So yeah, you can kind of just remember chaparral is much woodier and you're going to get like scratched up and stuff walking through it. Whereas the coastal sage scrub, you'll probably just come out smelling kind of nice and aromatic. So that's kind of how you can tell the difference. What else? Oh yeah, chamise, manzanita, very woody, very hardwood. Lilac, which is ceanothus, scrub oaks, which are kind of like short oak trees, penstemons, which are not very woody, but buckwheats and roosts, which are the sumacs and toyons, all very woody, kind of large shrubs. So again, kind of like a mini woodland forest. And there we go. Next plant community is oak woodland, which is like the real deal forest. Here it's a bit more sparse, but I'm sure you guys are familiar with like the oak woodland concept. It's the oaks and this kind of, is it just an iconic type of vegetation in California and characterized by oaks, of course, and Quercus is the genus name for oaks. So you'll find a lot of oaks and grasses in betweens, and maybe some ribes, which are the currants and gooseberries. They work really well in the dappled light understory of the oaks. And rhamnus is like red berries is another one that you might find in the oak woodland community. But oaks in general are considered a keystone species because they support the ecosystem in so many ways, and they actually provide for so many other species. That's what a keystone species does. So oak woodland, and just another plant community that we might find. Another community that you guys are probably familiar with is the desert plant community. I think most people know this one and are familiar with cactus and kind of agave types and stuff, and the Joshua tree. There are lots of different types of deserts, there's high and low desert elevations, but generally speaking, anything coming from any plants that are coming from a desert region are really tough and resilient in the face of heat and lack of water, right? So that's what makes them great options for our gardens, because they're just really tough and able to handle long stretches without water, and obviously are very heat tolerant. And what was I going to say? So yeah, basically, I think that's it. Desert, you guys are familiar with it. A lot of annuals you can see. This is a picture of the poppies, and they pop up after the rain, and that's very common to find, those huge blooms of wildflowers in the desert areas. So a lot of horticultural treasures in the desert that we like to use in gardens because of this feature of them being so resilient. Oh, like I was mentioning earlier, there's also riparian communities, which are usually anything found nearby or alongside a streamway or a waterway of any type, like an arroyo. It can be a seasonal waterway, but it's typified by the presence of some kind of water, so either seasonally or all year long. And those would be plants like juncus, which is in the kind of right here in the foreground, that green plant here with the little seed head, golden seed heads at it, that's juncus. Carex, which is a sedges type of grass. Platanus is the sycamore tree. Salix is willows. Ferns, ferns are characterized by liking some moisture. And monkey flowers and rubus also can be found in the riparian communities. But always good to know what some riparian plants, because if you're ever looking for a plant or you potentially, if you have a garden where you have a really wet spot, you might want to pick a riparian plant to go there because they're accustomed to having year-round water, or they're accustomed to like occasional flooding. So knowing a list of some riparian plants are always helpful. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the annuals. Sorry, not the annuals, the actual plants themselves. I will talk about the annuals also. But just as a note, this is where I grabbed my deck of cards. And there is a card in the front usually of the deck of cards that has like a legend and kind of explains the cards. They're really, really helpful. They have all these cool, it's just so organized, but basically at the top of the front of the card, you'll see the kind of water needs of the plant, which is the water needs of the plant once it's established. They're always going to need a little bit more water when they're getting established. It also has the sun requirements of the plant, and then it has the soil or drainage needs of the plant. So that's That's on the front. And then, oh, and on the front, you'll see also in italics font, the large italics font is the scientific name, which is like the genus and species. It's like that composite. If you guys don't remember from whatever science class of what, I don't know how long ago that was, but it's the 2-word compound name. So like for humans, we're Homo sapiens, that's our scientific name. So you'll find that you'll usually find at least the genus. So just like in the case of humans, you'd find the Homo part at least on the card. If there's several different species, they'll just post the genus. If it's, you know, just one particular species, it'll say Homo sapien, like the genus and species, the whole scientific name. So that will be in the italics. I recommend you learn the scientific name. It's like, this is how botanists talk. They don't use common names because they can be misleading, and common names can be different in different areas and different regions, or they can be used for multiple different plants. So if you want to be specific about a plant, use the scientific name. Also, the cards have the common name on the right below the scientific name. And then on the back side of the card, really cool. Also, you'll see at the top, there's the four seasons. And then it says, like, it basically highlights what time of year their seasonal color, they call it. But it's really just like the showiest part of the plant at what time of year. So it's such a cool feature, because if you maybe want, like, you know, a garden that's flowering all year long, you can use these cards to find something for every season. And it's not always flowers that are blooming. It could be the fruit or the fancy seed head, whatever it is, but it's the showy kind of most flamboyant part of the plant at whatever time of year. And then, no, not lastly, but second to last, obviously there's a blurb about it, which is always really helpful and has some like tips about specific varieties. And there's the little symbology icons on the bottom that tell you whether or not it's a good plant for beneficial insects like pollinators and bees, if it's a good container plant, if it's a fragrant scented plant, or if it attracts hummingbirds, or if it attracts wildlife. So those little icons will tell you that at the bottom. And then my favorite part is like the little size reference thing, which is basically like a person and a child next to the, you know, size of the plant. And it's just great, because I think when, you know, we say like it's 4 to 5 feet high and tall, you don't really think about what that means, but having a little icon really puts into perspective how big or small the plant really is. So that's just familiar with the deck of cards. But now I'll just kind of talk ad nauseum about plants, going through different slides, and I will take a break, of course, in the middle. But yeah, I'll try to keep the chat up if you guys, if you want, so that you can ask questions as I go through, because I kind of move through the slides as quickly as I can. Thank you, Brenda. Binomial nomenclature, that's what it's called, the scientific name. It's the official term for those compound words. Elise, is it good? It is good to use botanical names at the nurseries. Exactly. That's the perfect time to use it, because they're going to be specific about it at the nursery. Okay, so starting with annuals, you don't have a card that says annuals, you have a card that says wildflowers. And essentially same difference. Annuals, you know, wildflowers, or annuals in this case, are just, you know, basically short-lived annual plants. They complete their whole life cycle within the year. So they put out their leaves, they flower, and they seed and die all within the year. So that's why we call them annuals. But wildflowers fall under that category, and they're obviously, you know, everybody's familiar with the big wildflower displays, and so they're a fun pop of color. They're great filler for a new garden. And, you know, they're just, yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't know if I have to explain why wildflowers are great to have in your garden. They're great for pollinators. They're scented ones. There are, I mean, wildlife loves this, and it's just, yeah, it's a nice pop of color. And there are ones that are good for sun and good for shade and in between. So there's options, and those are listed on your deck of cards. So I won't get too much into that one. Okay, so I'm going to go with ground covers, then into shrubs, and then into ground covers, shrubs, I believe, perennials, and then trees, and maybe some vines. So here it's Arctostaphylos. So the genus is Arctostaphylos for manzanita. In terms of ground covers, there are Arctostaphylos or manzanitas for shrubs and trees also, but in terms of ground covers, well, first of all, all the manzanitas are kind of known for their like really elegant green leaves that are kind of olive color green to just like a nice, I mean, there's kind of a different tones of green that they have, but they're just a really nice, I'm losing all my adjectives today. But anyway, also characterized by that red bark, but that they have. So that and their evergreen leaves, and also they have these like urn-shaped little white to pinkish flowers that are super cute, little like lantern-looking things, and hummingbirds and pollinators and beneficial insects love them. And yeah, they're just great with the evergreen feature. In terms of ground covers, ground cover manzanitas can take a bit more water than the shrub types. In fact, the shrub types are pretty sensitive to summer watering, but the ground covers can take a little bit more. They, what do you have here? Yeah. Oh, yes. The uva ursi. So Arctostaphylos uva ursi, which is Point Reyes, or even a Pacific mist, or here also emerald carpet. These ones, you might want to be a little bit like, they want to be protected. They are better off in full sun on the coast, or like maybe some protected from the like afternoon sun if they're inland. So they're a little bit picky about being in full blasting sun, at least the uva ursi types. But there are a lot of different varieties. These aren't the only ones. Carmel sur is probably like the lowest growing one, but there's different ones that are like really hugging the ground spreaders, and other ones that are more mounding. So just finding what it is you're looking for, and there's probably one for you. There's ground covers for Artemisia. You have a card for Artemisia, but it is for the shrub. But that being said, it can also be used as a ground cover. You can see here on the right, this is Artemisia californica montara, and they're lovely for their like kind of grayish silvery green color, and it contrasts really well. You can see with like the darker greens, it's a great contrast with yeah, that standard darker green. And also the texture, there's like this feathery leaf, so that's a really nice textural difference. And they smell great. I didn't mention this, but they're fragrant, so they're lovely along a pathway like this, because you kind of get that nice smell on a warm day. So they are great for lots of reasons. In terms of ground cover, the Artemisia californica, which this is an example on the right, there's Montara, and there's also Canyon Gray, sorry. Canyon Gray is a bit more of a spreader, like a spidery spreading plant, and the Montara is more moundy, so you can see it's kind of like little clumps. So they both are ground covers, but they just have a little bit of a different kind of growing habit. So yeah, again, just picking the one works best for you. Artemisia pycnocephala, which is the one on the left, this David's choice, is a good option for not full sun inland. So it's a better option for maybe a coast or something like that. And it's definitely more of this like little hedgehog ball thing. So again, just picking what makes sense for your thing. These are really typical. I think Artemisia is really typical of the coastal sage scrub. They're great for, I know Artemisia californica is great for erosion. And what else is there? I don't know, they're just great. I might say that for everyone. They're just great. Anyway, so ground cover in terms of, there's another ground cover for Baccharis. Baccharis pilularis pigeon point, which is photographed here, that is definitely on the easy native plants list. So Baccharis pilularis pigeon point is just a great, always green, so evergreen with this like verdant green, and pretty reliable grower, almost even like a fast grower. It's really reliable, tough, and great for wildlife, great for beneficial insects. It's just like, it's like the humble workhorse. It's just a really strong plant, and just does well as a ground cover, covers things. It's actually pretty good for fire prone areas if you maintain it. As long as it doesn't get this like thatchy kind of bottom part that gets kind of woody, then it's good for fire prone areas, because it can, it doesn't have a bunch of dead wood and twigs underneath it. You can actually coppice this back completely. It just takes a beating kind of, and drought tolerant and heat tolerant, good for erosion control. It's just, yeah, like I said, just a kind of humble workhorse. And here it says likely top 10 native plants sold of all time. I do not have the statistics on that, but I trust Theodore Payne. But yeah, that's why it's considered one of the easies. There's also other ground cover options like the Twin Peaks 2 or San Bruno Lady and all the ones listed here. You'll have some listed on your card as well. But yeah, you have plenty of options with a ground cover like this. Okay, so there's Ceanothus ground covers. You have, I believe, a couple different cards for Ceanothus, ground cover shrubs and large shrubs or something. But Ceanothus or California lilac, they're really lovely evergreen again. Evergreen with these lovely blue to purple, even white, but blue purple shades of flower clusters. And anytime you see these clusters of flowers, this is a lot of little flowers all together. Those kind of flower clusters are always going to attract beneficial insects. So bees, pollinators, and whatever beneficial insects. So this is great for that. Also good for attracting wildlife. The flowers actually kind of have like a really light honey scentedness, like very light. I wouldn't call it like overbearing, but yeah, in terms of ground covers, Joyce Coulter is tough, like a great garden tolerant one. It's not on your list, but on my list, I would put Joyce Coulter as an easy one, but great for the garden and very tolerant of extra water, which our shrub Ceanothus are not. Yeah, but they get pretty large and broad. So make sure to give them plenty of space, at least like 6 to 8 feet wide. If you plant them too close together, they actually start to grow upward. And then they kind of look like these strange kind of like lumpy mound hedges, unintentional hedges. So make sure to give them plenty of space so they can actually spread out and act as a ground cover. Otherwise they go upright. So give them, the appropriate space. Oh yes, your card mentions this, but yes, most of the low growing Ceanothus are from coastal areas originally. So they do perform best on the coast in full sun or like in some light shade inland. So just for keeping that in mind. So a lot of these ground covers of Ceanothus don't want to be in full blasting sun very inland from the coast. Next, we have a slide about salvia, the ground cover. You have a card on salvias just as a shrub. I think most people, if they know a native plant, it's probably a salvia, some type of shrub, but they can be used as ground covers as well. And there's so many different selections of shrubs, but in terms of, and also with ground covers, but a great one for would be the Salvia leucophylla point sal. That's a purple sage. That is a nice low growing one and really, really common and, just an easy grower. And actually, no, it's not on your easy list, but the Salvia mellifera, which is the black sage, terra seca, that's on your easy list. So that's another kind of nice spreader. And you can see these two photos. This is bees bliss on the left and green carpet. It really, there's a tolerance of sun and water preference of all the sages. So you just kind of pick one that has the form that you're going for and the conditions. So picking the right one for your location, that's what you want to do. You always want to pick the right one in terms of the sunlight that you're getting and the amount of water that it will be receiving. And you can see the different forms, like the one on the left is much more low growing and spreading, and the one on the right, and also the one on the left has like these kind of longer leaves, and the one on the right has like a bit thicker leaves and a little bit more of a mounded shape and growth habit. So again, it's just about preference in that case, and of course taking into account the sunlight and the water needs. Okay, I think we are, yes. Now on to shrubs. So in terms of manzanitas, but for shrubs, it's there's so many options. In general, manzanitas are, once they're established, are very sensitive to summer watering and even like summer fertilizing. That can be like a really risky thing. So you want to be careful with them. They are kind of prone to fungal issues. So you want to make sure they have plenty of air circulation, and also you're not overwatering them, or even overhead watering. They don't like overhead watering so much. However, there's always exceptions, and there are cultivars that have been bred to be a little bit more tolerant of some of those things, like the overhead watering and stuff. And one of those, would be the Howard McMinn. Howard McMinn is definitely on the easy list, and it's kind of, one of the more easy manzanita shrubs if you want to kind of get started, but you're scared about, killing one. So there's some other ones here that are listed, like Ian Bush, Lester Roundtree. But in general, they always prefer good drainage. They don't like wet feet. So like I was saying, that summer watering can be risky because you can risk creating a fungal issue or fungal conditions in the soil. So that's just something to be aware of. Okay, then we are on to, wait, did I have something else I was gonna? No. Okay, so ceanothus shrubs, just like the ground cover, are gonna have these beautiful blue flower clusters and are great for wildlife and the whole, and the beneficial insects. They are pretty fast growing, medium to fast, and the blooms are great, as we already talked about, but these ones, like the manzanita, can be sensitive to summer water, so we want to be careful about that. And again, I think both manzanita and ceanothus both can be prone to kind of fungal issues, and they just, once they're established, they don't want any summer fertilizing, or not that we encourage fertilizing, but just to scare you off even more. They don't want summer fertilizing, or you have to be good about the summer watering if you are summer watering. I think actually, you do have, as a shrub, it's a very large shrub, just going back to the ceanothus. Ray Hartman is a variety that's really great. That would be kind of the equivalent of the Howard McMinn for the manzanita. So Ray Hartman is just a dark leafed one, and really fast growing, gets large, like a big tree almost, and just kind of considered an easy ceanothus shrub if you're looking for that. Cercocarpus, so this is like one of my faves. Cercocarpus betuloides is mountain mahogany. These are really great, heat tolerant, drought tolerant, great for erosion control, good for restoration projects. They are kind of slow growing, but they are very tough once they get established, and they can be really good for screens, and even just, for privacy, creating a hedge or whatnot. There is a variety that's more vertical. There's a couple of different betuloides that you can get into, and the vertical ones almost act like the same as like a bamboo or something, except for they're not invasive and they don't take over everything, but they're more vertical. If you don't have a lot of space for a giant broad shrub, Cercocarpus could be a good option. So also something cool about them is that they're nitrogen fixers, which is just a fun little thing, and probably why they're also good for restoration. But I really love them because they are evergreen and just kind of cute like that. And they do have these flowers that come on sometime in spring, which are like, okay, whatever, they're not super showy or great. But what happens is the flowers then mature. When the flowers mature, the seeds mature after the flower falls off, right? And the seed actually forms this like wispy, curly little ghostly seed that's all got these kind of hairs, and they cover the tree, and when it's backlit, it's just gorgeous. So that's actually the really cool part. That happens in summer. So you'll see on the card the seasonal colors for summer, because they actually flower in spring, and that's kind of like Eckies, whatever. But the kind of showy part is when the seed heads come up. I don't have a picture here, but on your cards, you can, there's a great photo that kind of highlights how they can be backlit, and they just are so like, I don't know how else to describe them, but like this ghostly cool seed that's very pretty. So one of my faves, if anyone's ever asking me. There's also Encelia. So this is Encelia californica, or there's also Encelia farinosa, which is more of the desert one and more silvery. And the californica is more this green leaf type. But these are great. They're definitely on your easy native plant list. They grow really quickly, so they're great for filling the space quickly. So maybe popping a couple in there to have something fill in sooner rather than, or at least amongst the slower growing ones maybe. They bloom like this with these like lovely kind of sunflowers, and anything in that family, the sunflower daisy family, which is the Asteraceae family, are amazing for attracting beneficial insects, pollinators, and the whole 9 yards. So they're great for that and attracting wildlife. Because anytime you have beneficial insects and pollinators and insects and stuff around, you have birds too. So it's always like, you know, they kind of go hand in hand. It's always good to have that's, you know, that's why we want the insects. They're just food for birds and other wildlife. So anyway, all these flowers create a habitat and stuff for the beneficial insects. And these you want to deadhead. So once the flowers are kind of spent, you can see some of these are kind of sad looking. You just cut it all the way back, cut that stem, that flower out. And what happens is if you're kind of on top of it, like basically you'll get like a spring bloom and you'll have a bunch of flowers. And as long as you're pretty good about deadheading and removing the spent flowers, you might get a secondary bloom in fall, which is rad. So that's something to aim for. Great. Also cut flowers. These are good cut flowers. Obviously, like a sunflower, you can just cut them and put them in a vase. They are drought deciduous, which means if you aren't watering in the summer, which with this guy you can, they can handle some summer watering and they stay green all year long. But if you're not, or it's undergoing a true drought, then they do lose all their leaves in the summer. That's what we mean by drought deciduous. So it might look kind of crispy and dry, but it comes back once it has water. So it's just something to know about Enselias, that it's not necessarily dead if it's in the middle of the summer and it's dry. Okay, now we're on to Eriogonum, which are the buckwheats. As it says here, buckwheats are the most diverse genus in California, so there are literally hundreds of them. And we typically use like, you know, a few dozen of them that in our gardens, but there really is a buckwheat for whatever situation you want. They all are going to attract birds and insects because these are basically flowers that are made up of a bunch of little flowers. And like I was saying, anything that's a bunch of flowers together is going to attract the insects and wildlife. And they just have differing, I mean, they usually the flowers are like a white or cream. And then, but there is yellow and also pink, as you can see on the left here. This is the left, the red flowering buckwheat is the Eriogonum rubescens, no, Eriogonum grande rubescens. And it's kind of this pink magenta color, and it almost turns more of like a brick red, and the cream ones go to this rusty color you can see on the right, and they turn totally like this oxidized rust or brick red color. So just kind of a cool plant that has like a seasonal feel to it because it's kind of aging over time, and even dried and spent, even the flowers, even when they're dried and spent, are very nice. So they make a good cut flower too, fresh or dried. They have so many different kind of flowering types and leaf types and shapes and sizes. So there's a lot of variety here. They can be kind of brittle, like these flower stalks can be kind of brittle. So maybe not in like a high traffic zone, especially these bigger flowering ones. They kind of knock off and break kind of easily. The most familiar one you might know is the California buckwheat, which is the Eriogonum fasciculatum. And that one is like all over the hills and chaparral and stuff. But these are great. You know, they're really good. Also great for erosion control, and yeah, tough, you know, pretty tough in terms of drought tolerant and whatnot. You can deadhead these. So once these are spent and maybe too dry for your liking, you just cut this whole thing back, this like flower stalk, and then you're just left with like just the green foliage part. This on the right is a cross between the St. Catherine's lace, which is Eriogonum giganteum, and Eriogonum arborescens, which is Santa Cruz Island buckwheat. And it truly has both features. The St. Catherine's lace, it has these mondo big flowers that you can see, like giant flower clusters. And then the arborescens, which is the Santa Cruz Island buckwheat, has these like elongated kind of fancy leaves. So this is a cross between the two, and it has both features. So there's also kind of like crossed hybrid ones too that are very cool. I mean, I feel like every native garden should have a buckwheat. So, so that's fun. There's also Gambelia, which is, wait, I'm trying to find my, yes. Gambelia, there is the Gambelia speciosa, which is the island snapdragon. And then there are the Gambelia juncea, which are the Baja snapdragons. Very similar, but the speciosa kind of has a larger flower. And you can see they have these tubular kind of lipstick colored flowers that hummingbirds love. Anytime you have these tubular shaped flowers, it's going to be a hummingbird magnet. So you can see it just is covered with flowers, and basically they start blooming in spring, and they flower the most at that time, but they're kind of flower all year long until winter. So kind of have a long flowering window, and hummingbirds really love them. The Juncea, there's the Grand Canyon, and there's also, I think there's like a Punta Banda one. Anyway, the Baja snapdragons tend to be a bit more sun and heat tolerant, and the speciosa a little less so. They do, what was I going to say about them? There was something, oh, they are cold sensitive. So they don't like really cold temperatures. So that's something to keep in mind. I think they're great for, it says here, they kind of spread out. It says here you could kind of climb a fence. It's a little difficult. You kind of have to train them and whatnot, or prune them appropriately, but they're great for like a slope or even cascading over kind of like a fence or a wall or something, but they are a real spreader. They're also actually on your easy native plants list. I forgot to mention, but yeah, yeah, also they can take a bit more water. You'll see on your card that they have the like 1.5 drops. So they can take a little bit of extra water. So that's why they're also considered easy, because they just do good do well in a garden setting. Okay, Heteromeles arbudifolia. This one, actually, wait, let's take a break. This is a good place to take a break. I need a break also because I've been talking a lot. Let's come back at 5:51. Let's just do 5 minutes because we don't have a ton of time, but 5:51 and we'll come back. If you guys have any questions too, you can ask me during the break. I think this is recorded, so people can see the questions later.
Everyone by now should have gotten the recording of class 1, and we'll send the recording of this class as soon as we get it. Thank you to our partners at USGBLA. I'm going to have to be out of here, I think, by 6:30. So any questions for me, please put them in the chat. We are planting tomorrow, so I will not be answering emails. But I'm here now if anyone has questions. Thank you.
I just realized my headphones weren't working because I saw you speaking, Brenda, and I was like, what? So if any of you were talking, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Did you hear me though?
I heard you. I just caught the end, which
Okay.
was if they have questions to talk to you. What else did you say? Anything I missed?
Yeah, nothing important. Just if anyone has questions, ask now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hector, buckwheat is a cotton ball. Yeah, Eriogonum means fuzzy net. That's what it means.
Perfect.
Yeah. So and fuzzy wool-like, etc. So in Spanish, Eriogonum is known as flor de borrego, which means sheep flower, because they look like little sheep. They're like little tiny clusters. So yeah, Eriogonum.
Yeah, they have the cotton balls, and then those cotton balls they usually age to like a rusty color. But like initially when they flower, yeah, they're like basically a cotton ball.
Yeah, so the aereo is the fuzzy part. So Areodoctin, that's fuzzy, right?
Oh yeah.
Aereo, what other aereo plants?
I know there's aereo.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
We're gonna learn a new language, but to me, it helps to know what the botanical name means.
Yeah.
like I have a class where I, talk about Eschscholtzia californica, which is just some guy's name, and that it grows in California, it would make more sense to call it enchilada californica, because at least enchilada sauce is like red, orange, or green,
Right.
which would describe the color. So, yeah, sometimes the names are useless.
Yeah, sometimes those scientific names, like the ego of whoever discovered it, gets in the way. But
Yeah,
other times they do a good job of describing it.
Arctostaphylos uva ursi. Arcto is bear, Staphylos is grape, uva is grape, and ursa is bear. So it's bear grape, bear grape.
Yeah, bear grape, bear grape. It's great.
That's an easy one. Uva de oso.
Uva de oso.
Ariodoculum, yeah. So that's fuzzy net thick leaf. So that's a thick leaf yerba santa, because crassifolium
Areodictum. Yeah, okay, because there you have the fuzzy ones, right? Because there's the areodictum that's not fuzzy also, but
it's fuzzy on the underside. So the top leaf, we have the shiny leaf yerba santa, the sticky leaf yerba santa,
they all are
the
fuzzy
narrow
on the
leaf.
underside.
The narrow leaf yerba santa would be the Areodoctian angustifolia, not the crassifolia. So yeah, it helps to know the etymology of the words.
For sure.
And yes, thank you, Marie. Enchilada californica makes way more sense than Eschscholtzia californica. Just saying. I'm the non-scientist for the scientists.
I mean, I feel like they missed an opportunity to just make them all make sense.
Oh yeah, what's it? Giant buckwheat. That one would make sense. It was the gigantium.
There's gigantium, but what that one does have big flowers. But the grande, the Eriogonum grande, is it's like a small one.
There was one that was something, a giant small flower, like a dwarf something Eriogonum gigantium. I'm like, that's like a contradiction in terms.
Yeah, you're like, why?
I don't know.
Yeah, that was just like not thinking it through.
Yeah, were there some other ones? Oh gosh. Olive the Corcus. Oh, the walnuts, the Juglans californica.
Yeah. What's Juglans? What's the
Juglans is Jupiter and glans is acorn. So they're Jupiter acorns.
Cute.
All right.
We should just use the common names that way. Then we would remember the scientific names.
Oh, I have a class for that. I have a presentation.
What's it called?
Plantas para pendejos. Just kidding. No. It was one that I did in conjunction with the Natural History Museum. The most common plants of LA is Malosma laurina.
Yeah.
Mal is bad, osma, odor, laurina is laurel. So it's a bad smelling laurel. Nice. Right? That would make sense.
It really makes total sense. Bad smelling odor. I mean,
I want to take your class, Brenda.
Let's do it.
How do we sign up for that class?
Right. I'm
pay
interested.
Me $10 and I'll
just
do it for you.
Venmo that to Brenda.
Just kidding. We're trying to get that here under, on the calendar. And all it is I go through and I talk about plant names. That's it. But I give them the botanical name, the regional name, which is important because that's not all, common name is a regional name. Yeah. Like the orange one, the daughter.
Yeah, daughter, yeah.
Yeah, here in California, we know it as greñas. In Texas, it's called fideo. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, right? Noodles.
Yeah, fideo makes sense.
Yeah. Greñas. Greñas for hair.
Greñas, that's what it's called. Greñas. So
hair.
Yeah, and in English, the regional names would be witch's hair, witch's shoelace. I'm like, all right, whatever it's going to take for you to remember. So we'll go over the distribution. So yeah, let's get that on the calendar. Anjali is sitting next to me.
Nice.
The plant names.
One of you?
Yeah.
Nice.
We have a popular demand.
Nice.
Anjali.
Nice.
We see the ghost of Anjali behind you.
Yeah, just like
it's not a ghost. She's in real life.
You
Yeah, so we're gonna get that on the calendar. And I don't know. So drop it in the chat. Like, how much would you be willing to pay for this class? $5, $10, free if you're a member? I don't know.
Nice. Okay.
It's going to be for beginner. Okay.
I'm going to jump into back into Toyon, the Heteromeles arbudifolia. But you guys, please, put that in the chat if you're down with that class, or let Brenda know, DM her. We got to get that. That needs to be on there.
Yeah,
Um,
heteromeles was, hetero is different. Meles is apple. It's
Oh,
a
Melly's
different
is
apple.
apple.
Yeah.
Oh, because so you can see on the right, the fruit is like a little different kind of apple.
Yeah.
It is also in the rose family, which is the apple family, and these fruits are considered pomme, which is the same as apples. So
Pomme.
they're
That's
not.
French for apple.
Yep, exactly. So they are in the same family as the apple tree, and that makes sense, dude.
Look at us learning all kinds of languages.
Look at this. So another cool name though for this one is the toyon. So its common name actually, I think, is like one of the only common names that still is used by, or that still goes by the indigenous name. So the Ohlone, which they called it toyon, and it still goes by that. Thank you, Brenda. So that's a cool feature of this common name, as opposed to some of the other common names that are just like whatever, boring.
Yeah, and the common name in Baja is fusique, which
we
comes, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying some people here still call it toyon too, but yes, I
Yeah.
have heard fusique
It's
as
fusique,
well.
which is a bastardization of the Cumia usique.
Mhm.
So it still has its indigenous roots on both sides.
Right,
kind
that's
of.
cool, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a game of telephone with words and names, and they kind of get a little messed up over time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so toyon is great. This one is so fun. It can be treated like a small tree if you prune it appropriately. Like I was saying, it is from the rose family. It is on your easy list, so it's definitely considered an easy plant. It flowers like in summer, and it has these white flowers on it, which are nice, but the fruit is like really beautiful and red, and it kind of happens in winter. So that's why the other common name would be Christmas berry, because this very much happens around Christmas time, and it has these lovely red berries that birds love. And anytime you have a fruit on a plant, any kind of fruit that's conspicuous like this, it's going to attract birds. So the cedar waxwings love this red fruit, and yeah, so it's like a good one for birds and wildlife, and also the flowers attract beneficial insects and whatnot. I did not know, but it says on your card that it's good for containers, but like I would have never considered it for that. So that's a fun thing. But it's great. It's easy because it takes the garden conditions really well, and you can prune it kind of however you like. It can be hedged and sheared. It can be kind of pruned into a tree-like form if you want, or a screen. So it is a tough plant in terms of that. Let's see the fruits are edible when they're dry. Apparently they can be toxic when in like really high quantities, but I think you'd have to be like a bird to be able to actually eat that many, because they are very small. But yeah, just a lovely evergreen plant, and they have these really delicately, lightly serrated leaves that are just really beautiful. I was really late to the toyon love game, so it's one of my faves now. Also, we have prunus, which is our native cherry. Again, with the fruit, it's going to attract a bunch of birds, and those flowers there attract beneficial insects and whatnot. There's Prunus ilicifolia. There's two Prunus ilicifolias, Prunus ilicifolia ilicifolia and Prunus ilicifolia leonii. And leonii is the island cherry, and the ilicifolia is the mainland cherry. Leonii gets a bit bigger and is more of like the kind of standard tree form, and the ilicifolia ×2 is more of a large rounded shrub, but both really gorgeous with their like kind of glossy leaves. You can see that have the kind of like holly like pokey parts of the leaf. But yeah, really gorgeous plant with evergreen leaves, which it's always nice to have some evergreen plants, because a lot of our plants go through that kind of seasonal phase of being a little bit crispy in summer, but these ones look gorgeous all year long. And they do have that lovely fruit that will attract birds. And they are edible, the fruits, but they're not, it's not like a cultivated cherry, which is a lot of meat compared to the seed. This is like a lot more seed than fruit, but still, it's edible and it's fun to eat. What else is there? I don't know. This one is also on your easy list. The Prunus ilicifolia is on your easy list. We have Rus, which is the sumacs. So there are several different types of rus. Sumac, sorry, there's the sugar bush, which is Rus ovata, and then there's the lemonade berry, which is the Rus integrifolia. And we have listed here laurel sumac, which was formerly a rus, but it's actually Melosma larina, which Brenda was mentioning. And but all of them are similar kind of leathery evergreen foliage and serve similar purposes. They're very large shrubs that are like 15 to 20 feet wide and tall. So they get very large. And most of them have kind of like a cream colored pinkish flower, like white to pink. Not super showy. This one here, the lentii, has a more showy pink flower, and it's a much more dramatic pink than the other ones. The lemonade berry, that name is because it has these like little tart fruits that are really sour if you suck on them. And it's more like a seed with like a little seed coating that you can kind of suck on. It's not really a fruit that you can eat. It's just like a seed, but it's very tart and kind of fun, and you can use it to make drinks. But sugar bush and lemonade berry are very similar, especially in the nursery trade. Out in the wild, I've seen them where they look really different, but essentially the main difference would be that the lemonade berry kind of prefers the coast. So, and the sugar bush is a little bit more for inland situations. So think of lemonade berry more as like coastal sage scrub and the sugar bush more as chaparral. That's kind of how I tend to see them in terms of in the wild. So Rus integrifolia is on your easy native plant list, and it does really well with pruning. In fact, or if you prune it early enough, you can kind of prune it into a small tree. So it can be a cute little tree, and can just be like, yeah, a nice specimen if you're what's it called, pruning it. So, but another reason is they're just great for their heat tolerant, especially the Rus ovata is heat tolerant, drought tolerant. The ovata is kind of cold tolerant as well, since it's more used to being inland. It's used to being kind of the more extreme temperatures of inland areas. And then the integrifolia is a little less so, but they're both super hardy, and hardy, I guess, not in the term that it's hardy to cold, but just very resilient. And they're all great for habitat for birds and wildlife and whatnot. I always see like quails that hide under them and whatnot. They're great. So Rus is a fun one and on your easy list. Ribes are your currants and gooseberries. And the main difference between gooseberries and currants is just the presence of thorns on the stem of the plant. So gooseberries have thorns and currants do not, or spines, currants are just spineless. And really they're kind of like, so one of them, the viburnifolium, is an evergreen shrub, and it kind of grows like a spreading, not vining, but just kind of a spreading clumping thing, and it has a kind of perfumey scent, and that would be the only one that's evergreen. But the rest of them are summer deciduous, so in the summertime their leaves dry up and they're not very showy. So you want to match them with like another evergreen plant, or as an accent or something like that. The main kind of cool thing about them is not only the berries or currants on them, so the fruit again will attract birds, but the flowers are really, really cool. And there's just like a whole diversity of different flamboyant flowers in the Ribes genus. So you can see, for example, this Ribes aureum has these lovely little yellow tubular flowers, which would be great for hummingbirds. They love those skinny little tube flowers. But also golden currant is great. It's kind of an easy one to keep alive, and it can be, it's like a thicket, it kind of grows like a thicket, and you could probably espalier it, along something. But you can see it has these like bright little flowers, and then it has like a yellow fruit that kind of turns like a dark brown color, darker yellow, I suppose. But also, if you look at your flashcard, you'll see the picture of the flowers from Ribes speciosum and Ribes sanguineum, and you'll see the like other flowers that are really showy and kind of extravagant. So the Ribes speciosum is like this cute little neon orange reddish flower that kind of dangles like a little fairy ornament. Super beautiful, and hummingbirds love it. And then the ribes sanguineum is like this more kind of extravagant, like pinkish flower. So there's just a lot of cool options with the ribes in terms of if you're looking for like hummingbird loving flashy flowers. Oh. Okay, there is, oh wait, I think I missed one. Yeah. Achillea millefolium, which is common yarrow. This is a great filler plant. Okay, we're also in the perennials, which is perennials are essentially just kind of the more fleshy plants that come back year after year. So this is something that you put in the ground and it keeps coming back. It's going to flower and maybe die back. The flowers might die back, but they'll come back again and again every year. So it's different than a wildflower, and also different than the shrubs or something, because it's not really a woody perennial like that. So anyway, yarrow's great. You can see these flower clusters, like, again, a bunch of little flowers making up one big flower cluster. So that means they're great for beneficial insects, pollinators, bees, the whole nine. And great for containers too. They're kind of shallow rooted. So great for containers. They don't need like a huge deep container. They do spread by rhizomes. So they're like underground runners. So they actually spread pretty quickly and can fill a space. So that's why they're used as a lawn. They can be used as a lawn substitute. But I would say it'd be a lawn of like low traffic, not like you're not slip and slide on this and like running football and the whole thing on it. So very low traffic lawn, and maybe like an occasional mowing. But you can see there's some leaves here. They have this like lovely kind of feathery fern-like leaf. So really cool texture, especially if you're using it as a lawn. But even outside of that, they're really beautiful. And the flowers come up, and once they're kind of a spent flower, you can just cut them back, deadhead them. Obviously, if you're using a lawn, you can mow it. The flower colors, this is island pink, so it's pretty bright, but most fluorescent. But there are all sorts of tones of colors that are more muted as well, like creams to pastels to, there's a whole ton of color ranges with Achillea. So this one is a great option. Also shorter. So if you want something kind of smaller and like maybe in the front of your garden, or like where you're seeing, you kind of want to stack it. So there's the taller things in the back and the shorter things in the front. So Achillea is a nice option. And it can be, because it grows by rhizomes, it can get a bit aggressive and keep spreading. So make sure you're not putting it in a place where you don't want it to spread. You know what I mean? Also, there's epilobium, which also grows by rhizomes. So again, can kind of get spready and maybe a little out of control, but just make sure you're planting it somewhere where it can do that. And epilobium, common name is California fuchsia. There are like compact, low growing ones to kind of a little bit more open, taller growing ones, which never are really more than 2 to 3 feet tall. But there's different variety of sizes. Also leaf type, you can see even this picture, there's a lot of different leaf colors and types. This one on the bottom right is kind of like silvery and very skinny, thin leaved. And the one on the top is a much more like lime green, fleshier leaf. So a lot of different options with epilobium, and they like sun. Some can do well in moderate shade, but the flowers are obviously this tubular shape again, so hummingbirds love it. And the great thing about it is they flower into fall. So they're like a late bloomer. So they're like late summer and fall that they're blooming. So if you want like a year-round hummingbird habitat, you're definitely going to want to have some epilobium in there, because they bloom late into the season, which not all the plants do. There's not always a late bloomer. So this is a great option for late bloomer, really vigorous grower. And one thing about it with the maintenance is you cut it back all the way. So sometime around New Year's, once the flowers you'll see they dry up and it looks pretty dry. You'll cut it all the way back. You'll coppice it. So you only leave like a little bit. You'll see like a little bit of green growth at the bottom. You just remove the whole thing, and not pulling it, cutting it back. And you'll see that leave it just so whatever little green growth is growing there, and it'll totally come back the next spring and bush out and have flowers the next year. So it's great. You just kind of do this coppicing thing every year and it comes back vigorously. If you don't do that, you actually, it becomes kind of like thinned out and weaker. Like it actually, you'll just have some growth at the tips, and then you have this dry mass in the center. So you want to be coppicing it back year after year, so you get this lush growth and lots of blooms like this. Okay, next there's Erigeron glaucus. Like the name suggests, seaside daisy, or the common name. It's from the coast, so it kind of does better on the coast and maybe better suited for coastal conditions. There are ones that are a little bit more heat tolerant, like Wayne Roderick or WR. But yeah, typically it is on your easy plant list, but it is under coastal plants. So yeah, it's an easy plant for the coast. It's nice and compact. It just grows like 1 to 2 feet wide and like, no more than a foot tall. And it gets all these like daisy-like flowers on it, these purplish or like lavender pink, I don't know what color you want to call that, flowers on it. And again, this kind of sunflower daisy type of flower is really great for beneficial insects. So this is a total magnet for that. This is also good for containers. Short little growing guy can be great for containers. And you want to deadhead this. So the flowers, they flower almost all of the year except for the coldest time of the year. But as long as you keep deadheading it, they keep pushing out flowers. So it's a great filler, and you can kind of plant a bunch of them together and have a nice kind of swath like this photo suggests. And this could even be like a substitute for something like ice plant, because even though it's not as fleshy and succulent like an ice plant, it's native, so the beneficial insects and stuff will appreciate it. But also it kind of has a similar type of flower if someone's looking for that. And yeah, I think this is it's definitely easy, so it's a good starting point for someone who is maybe skeptical, I guess. Speaking of that, penstemon would definitely be like the gateway native plant for someone who's skeptical about native plants. Super showy and flashy. You can see this one's Penstemon spectabilis is the showy penstemon. So really gorgeous, stunning colors, and usually some, kind of these pinks and purples, and just this big trumpet-like or open mouth flower that hummingbirds love, and also bumblebees will like get in there. They'll fit their little whole bodies in there. And so great for bees and hummingbirds. It's just, yeah, it's a crowd pleaser. And Margarita Bop is a variety that is pretty easy, and it's kind of the most planted one, and it's pretty tolerant of most garden settings, and it flowers for months, like spring, summer, it's flowering. So it's a great, like I said, I think it's a great like gateway plant for folks that are new to it. So yeah, this color range of reds and purples. Some are a little bit shorter, like the Margarita Bop is kind of a smaller, low mounding type. And then this showy penstemon is more of a opener, bushier type. So there's different kind of growing habits of growth. And then lastly, you should pinch this plant. I mentioned this in the first lecture, tip pinching. It's basically when you pinch out the new growth of a new plant, like just the new tips of the growth, you pinch that out, and that encourages the plant to branch out and become bushier. So it's so that it has a better form and it fills out and it's denser. But especially with penstemon or sages too, I suggested that you're doing that with sages. It's so that they don't get too top heavy. It's so that you kind of have like a nice base and fill it, and it fills out the space. So tip pinching the penstemons is a good idea. Let's see, what do I have on time? I'm kind of short on time because we have to get to your guys's, so I'll try to speed through the grasses. Grass, you have just one card that just says grasses. There's so many. We have a few slides of grasses. I was kind of slow to carrying because I was like, I'm even still pretty bad at identifying grasses, I have to say. But that being said, they're great as a textural accent, and bunch grasses really make a design in a space like complete. They just are a different texture, and they really add to like all the rest of the natives that you're more familiar with. So carex are the sedges. There's a lot of different options. I believe this picture here is Carex panza, but you can see this kind of like wavy texture, really beautiful. You can use them as like a bunch grass, like a individual bunch grass, or even a as like a lawn substitute. So like Carex panza, you can see like this one on the right, you can plant several of them and it has more of a lawn look or more of a filled out space look. Okay, Stipa, we have the needle grasses. There's definitely different types of Stipa. The Stipa pulchra is the purple needle grass, and the needle grasses do have kind of a more pointy, spiky seed head sometimes. So you might want to be careful because they can kind of stick in your socks and things, or like your pet's fur. But still, that's not like, not all of them are like that. But anyway, yeah, it can be a great accent piece, or you know, like all the grasses kind of have a similar positive to them. They are, what's else? Oh, they're also, all the grasses are usually very deep rooted, so they're great for erosion control, or even at the bottom of a rain basin or infiltration basin or dry riverbed. They're great for that because they can take maybe like a seasonal flooding. So that's another great reason to have grasses. The fescues, or the festuca, which is more of a cool season grass, they are often used as the lawn alternative, but even the lawn alternative needs quite a bit of water. So just because it's a native doesn't mean that it doesn't need water to make it look like a lawn, if that makes sense. And but you can also use these as just like an accent piece, you know, just as one big one like this Moody Blues here. And I think I'm going to go to, okay, yes, there's, this one is a warm season grass. So Spirabolus aeroides is a beautiful warm season grass. It's always good to have a warm season grass or know if they're cool or warm, because most of our plants, what it means is a warm season grass is that it puts on its green growth and sends up its like seed heads and flower stalks if during the cool season. Or sorry, during the warm season. I was talking about warm season grasses, sorry. Cool season grasses are gonna put out their green growth and put out their seed heads during the cool season. And most of our plants most of our native plants look pretty good in the cooler season or right after the rain, right? So having a warm season grass is really key because it'll look nice and green during the summer when other stuff maybe dries out. So having a couple warm season grasses is always a good idea. Spirabolus is a beautiful option, Spirabolus aeroides. You can see they have these like airy fairy lovely seed heads, or like growing seed tips that are really beautiful when the wind blows, and they just, not only are they a lovely texture, but they add that like wispy like movement to your garden also. Another warm season grass that you guys are probably familiar with is a deer grass. That one is planted pretty readily, and that is a warm season grass. That's on your easy native plants list, but it's so common in the landscaping industry at this point. I just thought I would share the Spirabolus. And most of our bunch grasses, you're gonna have to cut back at least one time a year. And we'll talk about that in the pruning class. Dudleas, live forevers, these are great for like good drainage zones. They like rock mulch. You can see all of these have kind of a rock feature thing going on, or you can see these are higher up, the ones on the left-hand side, a little bit higher on the landscape than the others because they want good drainage. They really, really don't want their feet wet. And they really thrive on just neglect, you know, just like once they're in the ground, they can pretty much take care of themselves. They are very sensitive to summer water. So I would be careful. In fact, I would discourage watering them in the summer unless you have like straight sand or you have them in containers. Otherwise, just leave them, and they do dry up a bit and get look like they're hibernating in summer. But the second it cools down in fall, they start to green up again. Even if there's no rain, they just start greening up once it cools down. So these are some cool options. Did somebody gonna say something? Not sure. I thought I heard someone. Okay. I'll keep going then. Okay, well, we have an agave. This one you don't have a slide for. I'm sorry, a card for, but this is just, you guys are pretty familiar with agaves. This is a a Baja native agave shawi, which has these, you can see their leaves are really cool. They have the serrated edge, but they also have like a reddish orange lining on the edge, which is cool. And then of course, this lovely flower head that comes out is like super extravagant and loud and cool. So these are great. They can last for decades in the garden, and everybody's pretty familiar with agaves and how reliable they are and tough, and they live off of very little water. So this is a good option. Quercus, these are the oaks. Oaks, as I mentioned earlier, keystone species and great for producing really good habitat for other wildlife. They are slow growing, there are oaks, but if you can convince someone to put an oak in their yard, you're doing good work, and you can like just pat yourself on the back and be like, I did something good in my lifetime. So I really like, if you can do that, that's great. They don't all have to be giant. There are smaller ones like the Quercus berbertifolia, which is a kind of smaller oak, and there's different options, but you can see on your card some other options. I'll just trying to move quickly, but I just seem to be going the same speed. Cercis occidentalis, which is the western redbud, is actually it's a great tree for small spaces. So it's kind of a smaller tree. You can see it's when it flowers, it's like this showy bright thing. So it's really beautiful. It actually is winter deciduous, so it loses all its leaves in winter and then it blooms on bare wood. So you can see it's just a big show of really bright pink flowers, or pinkish purple flowers. So it's very stunning in that way. And if somebody's looking for that kind of striking feature with a real seasonal vibe, this is a good option. It's native to like the Sierra foothills, and I believe it's some canyon zones in San Diego County also, but it does really well in Southern California. So it's a great option, and the flowers are edible. And the flowers, this is in the pea family. If you've ever seen a pea plant, they have similar like flowers. And so they form these little pods that apparently when they're young are edible as well. But actually something cool that I learned from Carol Bornstein is the leaf cutter bees cut out these leaves. I mean, they cut out lots of different leaves, but particularly the Western redbud, they actually cut out the parts of the leaf here and line their nests with those leaves. So it's great for beneficial insects and wildlife. Chelopsis linearis is the desert willow. Great tree. Has, just kind of, you can see lovely structure, and it is winter deciduous also, so it's bare in the winter, but when it kind of turns back on sometime in spring, it starts flowering, and it has these lovely kind of trumpet shaped pale pink to lavender flowers. And again, like bees and hummingbirds love that type of flower shape. And there is a variety called Burgundy, which I believe is here on the right, and it has that like red wine colored flower. The other ones are more just a kind of solid pinkish lavender color. But yeah, loved by butterflies and hummingbirds, and it blooms for a very long time, basically spring to fall. So it's a long blooming window. And then lastly, I have some like an option for vines. So this is Calistegia, the Calistegia macrostegia, which is the island morning glory, are really fast growing. I mean, it's a true vine. So it's, winding around things and really growing onto things and climbing over it. So it's very vigorous and fast growing. So if you're looking for something like that, this is a great option that's native. I wouldn't put it on anything you didn't want to get covered by it. So you want to be intentional about it. They can get like 20 feet tall and wide. They really are vigorous growers. So it might be great for like a rain tank that you want to protect from the sun, or like a pergola, or whatever, fence, whatever you're actually trying to cover. So it's a great option. And those flowers are the long window of flowering too. So spring to fall also. So you'll have these flowers kind of basically all year long, and good for beneficial insects and hummingbirds and wildlife alike. So this is a good vining option. I want to get to your, well, let's see, I have a couple. these are some exercises we'll get back to, but before I forget, like last week, I'm just gonna go to the homework so you guys have it. Like I said, the homework's always in the outline, but the homework for this week is just to observe, I would say just one native plant, but you can do a few, but observe a native plant in a garden setting, like not in the wild, but one in a garden setting, and use your flashcards or whatever resources you want to kind of learn about it and compare resources, because they're not all the same. Some of them say different things, and I want to get your take on what you're seeing and what you're reading and finding out about it when you research it from either cards, or you can use the Theodore Payne Foundation database. They have a database on their website. Also, there is calscape.org. Calscape's a great resource, and it has all the native plants, type it in, and it tells you maintenance things on it, sun preference, drainage, all those things. So calscape.org, actually, wait. Yes, I have the list here. Calscape, Theodore Payne Foundation database, and Las Colitas website can be really helpful too, another nursery with a lot of information on it. And then LADWP also has their kind of California friendly landscaping, which isn't just natives. But sorry, sorry, there we go. So yeah, observe a native plant and then just compare it to the flashcards and like, how old is the plant? How old does it look like it is? Is it full size? Is it flowering? Does it need maintenance? How is it being maintained? What are you seeing? Like based off of what you find out from your resources, what's your take? Tell me what you are thinking about it. It's very young, or maybe it needs to be pruned, or it's crowded, or wrong mulch for this situation. Maybe it needs to be whatever, something like that. So that's your homework for this week, or for this class. And I wanted to get to your guys's pictures that you sent in. One thing I would suggest, in case, because since I'm on this, this is an exercise I had in mind if I don't have time to go back to it. I would really recommend this exercise. It seems really like, oh God, I don't know what's going on. Okay, I'd really recommend doing this with your cards. If we have time, we can do some of this. But kind of like sorting the flashcards by, say, water needs or sun requirements, so that you can kind of create on your own like a plant community, because that way you can kind of see the plants together, like, oh, these are all the sun-loving plants that would do really well together. I also would recommend like look up all the slow draining soil ones, and you'll notice that they're usually from a riparian community, and that makes sense because they're used to a slower draining soil or having wet feet. So I really recommend this if you just kind of want to get to know the plants and who goes well together. Okay, so let me go switch to this one. Oops, there we go. Okay, so how about you guys can participate a bit more here, and I'll take a break from so much talking. But we went through a bunch of the plants, and I have a few questions, and you guys can chime in either on the chat or unmute yourselves. But essentially, like, what do you think this plant is? If you don't, I'm sure many of you guys know, but also like, what are some of the features of it? What kind of, using your cards, check out, I want to know like what kind of soil or sun requirements it needs, and all that. Also, what could it substitute for? Anyone want to take a salvia? Natasha put salvia. I don't know if I hope my headphones are working. Is someone talking? But yes, this is a salvia.
Mm-hmm.
So, Natalie, you say salvia mellifera. Hard to see how dark the leaves are, so maybe Cleveland sage too. I know the one on the left is Cleveland sage because they put that in their homework, so I'm assuming they know that it's Cleveland sage. But yes, some kind of salvia, maybe a Cleveland sage or a salvia mellifera. Does anyone checking out their cards? What do the cards say about that?
Okay.
I don't even know where mine are. But what could this be a substitute for? Just looking at it, even if you don't know what it is. What is a non-native plant that you've seen in the landscape a lot that this could be a great substitute for? Anna said lavender. Yeah, like something like lavender, especially because it, what does it smell like? It has a really lovely fragrance. If you guys aren't familiar with the Cleveland sage, most of the sages have like a really nice fragrance. So this would be a great option for a lavender alternative. Also, lavender it's not a native, but it is from a Mediterranean climate. And so it's considered California friendly and does really well planted with natives. So you don't have to go 100% natives. You can mix them with other California friendly plants and the watering will be really similar. And that's always an option. But yeah, these you can see on the right, this is like the dried seed heads. Diane said rosemary as an option. That's a great point. Rosemary also is another California friendly that kind of has a purplish light colored flower that's similar and has the aromatic fragrance. So yes, great option for substituting it with. You can see on the right, I was going to say, these are the dried seed heads. You can cut these back. You can cut back salvias, pretty good amount, like a third to even a half annually, and they'll come back. You don't have to. If you leave it, they'll just kind of stay bushy and they can maybe be more coverage for like birds and stuff, but you can cut them back pretty hard and usually like late summer or even now and like fall and then they come back, and you usually want to cut it back to like another pair of leaves. So you wouldn't cut it in the middle here, you'd cut it all the way back, but it usually would look something like this when you're cutting it, not so fresh and green. Okay, this one's an easy one. Who knows this one?
White sage.
White sage, yeah. Do you know the genus and species by chance?
Salvia apiana.
Nice. Who said that? I don't know who is there.
John.
Tom? Do I have a Tom?
John.
John. Okay. I was like, we have a Tom?
John, yeah.
Okay. So John, Salvia apiana. So it's definitely a salvia. That's the easy part of sages. You can always start with salvia and then buy yourself some time. But yeah, white sage, this is like, what could this be substituted for? Or what are some things you might see from I don't know if the cards have anything to say about white sage. Anyone have any personal experience or questions or comments? I'm trying to find my card that says sage.
Halfway through.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got the white sage. So oh yeah, white sage is one. Yeah, great, thank you. Culinary sage, it could be a substitute for culinary sage. It's much bigger and bushier, but it obviously has a similar use, and I've used it as a culinary, like culinarily. It just I use less usually, and it is different, but yeah, it's an option, and it is a lovely sage, and also because it's so what is the word? It's like somebody help me. It's when you exploit a plant, but you're harvesting it exploitively. Anyway, that's what's happening with white sage. Sorry?
Like a monocrop?
Well, it's actually being harvested illegally wildly. I know that happens here in Baja, and it's being exploited crazy. They just literally remove bags and bags of it, and trucks go into wild areas and remove it. So growing it on your own is such a important part, because then you're not adding to the industry, because people buy those like little bundles at whatever store and you don't know where they come from. And a lot of times they're exploitively like harvested from wild places. I know that's really, really happening here in Baja a lot. So I would really recommend planting one, especially if you like to buy those bundles, those smudge sticks, you can make your own. But yeah, let's see. Okay, this is another kind of like, we covered it. What are we seeing here? They're not necessarily all the same. I just kind of, sometimes I put like with like, or just like not sure, throw them together.
Buckwheat.
Buckwheat. Yeah, we got a bunch of buckwheats in the chat. And yeah, what do we know about buckwheats? What is the genus name of that?
Eriogonum.
Nice. Okay, so we got that. And any kind of, what are some highlights maybe that we mentioned that are, what is it good for? And what is like a substitute that you might use it for instead of?
I mean, I feel like this could be also substituted for rosemary, although it doesn't smell very strong.
Totally, I agree. I feel like visually the leaves and stuff are really similar. And yeah, it doesn't have the smell, but if somebody just kind of wants like structurally and like look wise something similar, it's great for sure. I totally agree.
You could probably substitute that for Acacia rhodolens.
Acacia rhodolens, do you know the common name of that? I'm not good with the.
That's the freeway
just-
acacia. That's the
Oh,
one they
okay,
plant
yeah.
all over the new
Yeah.
HOA and freeway sites.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Yeah, that's a good one for sure. It could be an option for that. And it's good. It's a pretty sturdy plant. Like once it's in the ground, it doesn't, and it's established, it doesn't really need a lot of care and maintenance and can do pretty good on its own. So yeah, it's a great plant for what's it called? Like traffic islands or places where people aren't really, maintaining it so meticulously. The one on the left, I believe, is a different, it's not like, because I think the two on the right are probably some kind of, or probably Eriogonum fasciculatum, which is the California buckwheat and the common one that most of us know. And, oh, Anna, thank you. I just saw that you said cut flowers are dried or fresh. Yeah, that's a great option for someone who's looking for that. Because some people want a garden where they can make like little flower arrangements and stuff. I was gonna say the one on the left, looks like a buckwheat that like you can see the leaves are a bit different than the ones on the right. I don't know if anyone noticed that. Also the grass in the front here, in the foreground of this is, I believe, a Budalua. And they have this cool feature when the flowers dry, the seeds dry, this like little kind of worm looking seed head, they go kind of horizontal and they look like little, I don't know, like that with what I'm doing with my hands. So those are kind of cool. That's a very cool grass with a cool seed head like that has that feature where once they dry, they kind of do this like horizontal move. That's cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Anna mentioned that buckwheats are from the chaparral communities. Also, you do see them in the coastal sage scrub as well. You kind of see them in both, but there are so many. It's like such a diverse genus, so you see them all over. Yeah, you do. There are options of all sorts of types. So I'll get into the ones that are maybe we didn't really go over. Here's one. Anyone familiar with this? You might be familiar with like one that looks like it. So Natalie said Matalia poppy. This is actually not Matalia poppy, but looks just like it. Has that same fried egg poppy flower. Definitely a poppy. I don't believe it's in your deck of cards.
So prickly, some kind of prickly poppy.
Yeah. And Natalie, yeah, you also said prickly poppy. Great. So yes, this is prickly poppy and similar flower, but it has this, you can see the like prickly leaves and even the little like, the flower, is that sepals? Yeah, the sepals, which is what kind of encases the flowers. So they're very prickly. So it's just an alternative to that. And it's much shorter, shorter growing. I think it's it's like starts with an A.
Argamon?
Yes, Argamon. Thank you, John. You're on top of it. Yeah, so Argamon is the this one's genus. What about this one? Sorry, not all the pictures are easy to tell too, I know. Does anyone know what this is? Sometimes, even if you guys submitted to, feel free to, I don't remember who put what, so you're basically anonymous. If that makes you more comfortable. Anyone? Penstemon? Yeah, this kind of looks like it could be like a penstemon maybe, or even like a Gambelia, what's it called? Yes, thank you, Laura. I was thinking it's this salvia, which I believe is actually an Arizona native, if I remember correctly, and not a California native. But anyone can correct me because honestly, I'm not going to claim to be the expert on all the native plants. But yeah, it's hard to say. I almost thought it was the Gambelia speciosa, but the flowers are hard to see And usually flowers are kind of the easiest way to identify the plant, but at least for me, I know Brenda's really good at identifying things by the leaves. So anyway, if it's that Arizona one, that one's commonly planted in the landscape, and it does really well. It's a California friendly, so it does really well with our natives, but isn't one, but it could be a penstemon also. There are quite a few types of penstemons, not just that one in the photo that I showed. There are lots of different types. So honestly, I'm not really sure. But what about that? You guys know this one's not a native on the top there, the one with the dangling trumpet flowers. Anyone know who that is? That's really common in the urban landscape.
Brugmansia.
Yeah, Brugmansia. How about a substitute for Brugmansia? Does anyone have one for that? A native?
Datura.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, that's what I would think. If you guys, I think you do have a card of Datura, but has a really similar shaped flower, trumpety, but more of a bush shape and not so much of the tree. And yeah, a nice option for like a nighttime pollinating garden if you were into that. Okay, here are two photos, not the same, but just put them together to make things a little bit easier. Any ideas about these? I know on the right, so the left, yes, this is Blue Dix, which is they just recently changed the genus of it. It used to be Dichelstema, I believe, or yeah, I think it was Dichelstema capitosa, but they recently changed the genus to something different that I can't remember, but it's sort of similar. But yeah, this is a great, I haven't seen this in the nursery trade really, and it would be harder to come by. So you do see this in the wild though, and they have these like little corms on the bottom, basically underground, and they're actually edible. And I know they're, in Spanish we call them cacomites, and you can eat the little corms. But yeah, beautiful little thing that kind of comes up in summertime, usually in disturbed areas. And I think also the common name is wild hyacinth, but it's not truly that. But anyway, yeah, that is a California native, and it kind of basically it's a like type kind of like a bulb, and though it's not a true bulb, and essentially it dies back and they sprout back up from the same spot when there's a good rain or whatnot. What about the one on the right? I see, Enna says, is Datura native to California, and what was the one that looks like it? Datura is native to California. It's got a pretty wide range though, so it is considered a native. It's a, what is the, do you mean, Enna, did you mean what was the plant that I said looked like it in the slide? I think, okay, yeah, that was the Brugmansia. I can go back. It's the smelly, they're really fragrant. It's more of a tree, but they both have these like big trumpety flowers. The Brugmansia ones kind of hang down like that. It is different, but similar vibe if you were going for that. And both like
the vine that you just had in the lecture also is similar, no?
Oh, I could see that. Yes, however, the flower of the macrostegia is much smaller. It's more like kind of like a silver dollar or something, but similar. I like what you're thinking. Like it is similar kind of in terms of like a big open flower, but it's not nearly as large, which is hard to see on the or know from the slides. That kind of is the cruddiest part of being virtual for all these things. But yeah, the one on the right is definitely more of like a naturalist, like going out in the wild. I don't think people would like, unless you had like a very deep cut client. I don't think anyone really asked for this one. This one I just learned or like identified recently, and it's a wreath plant, which is Stephana Maria, and basically it flowers on essentially almost like bare wood. It just looks like these dry sticks, and it's usually found in disturbed areas. It is a native, but really unlikely that you would have it in a landscape setting. And yeah, that's all I can really say about that one. Let's see if there's a, yes, it is kind of weedy. It definitely isn't disturbed. Yes, yeah, I see it on I always see it on pathways because it is along usually disturbed areas and yeah, hikes and stuff. Okay, left and right, any comments, anything to say here? maybe, or substitutes, what they could substitute for. You guys don't, you can be shy, but you can also just shout something out. I really, again, it's very anonymous.
I feel like I
Is that
keep,
Pacific? Good.
oh, I also keep chatting, but is it mule fat on the right and it's ceanothus on the left?
It is ceanothus on the left, which is, yeah, clear with that flower cluster. And on the right, good guess, but it's not a mule fat. Anyone else want to try a gander? I know
Is that
someone
Pacific
knows.
wax myrtle?
Yes, yeah. So the Pacific Pacific wax myrtle. You actually, yeah, check that out on your cards. That's definitely, we didn't go over it, but you'll see it on your cards. It's under M. It's Morella or MYR Mirica, something like that. Yeah, it's Pacific wax myrtle, and you'll see a picture of it. It does, it's mule fat, it's like looks very similar, and I know the picture is not the most like highest quality, so it's easy to confuse. But anybody looking at the card want to share what it says about it, or a substitute, what it could substitute? I mean, I can like think of the talk about freeways, like looks like it.
Oleander.
Yeah, oleander. John, you're like reading my mind. We got the same, I think we have the same visual cues for plants. But yeah, this is like a real sub for something like an oleander. And also because if you check out the cards, it talks about it being really fast growing, and it's an evergreen shrub. So yeah, it gets pretty large like oleanders can. And yeah, I can't think of much else to say about it. Any other substitutes for this, or should I move the heck on? Also, we're getting into like Q&A, so if you guys have other questions that aren't regarding this, we can just kind of like throw them all at the wall right now. Winding it down. So on the left here, right, I mean, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with this. Right one is like a tumbleweed essentially, and I'm sure nobody's asking for this as a client, like I want tumbleweeds in my yard, but I thought I should put it here because tumbleweeds aren't, well, the kind of standard tumbleweed, which is the salsola, something, I think that's the genus of it. It's a naturalized species, so it's not a native, but naturalized species are ones that have basically escaped from wherever they came from, and or like maybe they were in some yard, or they hitched a ride on a boat or a tractor or whatever, and they are now naturalized in the landscape, so they can propagate on their own outside of the wild. So things like mustard, you'll see a lot of the black mustard is a naturalized plant. So some of those plants that you see come up with the rains, and you're like, oh, like a lot of people think that they are natives, but they aren't. They've just naturalized. So tumbleweed is a good example of that. And I'm glad someone posted it, because it's good to know even those ones are not native. And on the left, is anyone take a guess? I know it's not always easy to know, especially if you don't have the flowering head. Yucca, yeah, yucca. There's I was thinking it's there's the Hespero yucca whipplei, which maybe that's little yucca. I know that there's the Our Lord's candle, looks like this a lot, or chaparral yucca. That's another common name for it. But yeah, this is a great option. Obviously, it's from a desert plant community, so probably could handle this environment where the tumbleweed is. But yeah, desert plant community. You guys are probably familiar with what could go with that. Does anyone know what plant community this comes from or what it is? You might find it on the 10 freeway going, going in many directions, but specifically I was thinking going out to like Coachella Valley zone. Creosote. Yeah, desert creosote. Yeah, and you said that. So yeah, this is, oh yeah, I guess I missed all those chats like there. But yeah, essentially desert plant community. This is definitely a really common one that you see. so yeah, maybe someone in a desert plant community has that lovely, well, I grew up in the desert, so to me, I associate this smell with the rain, because that's what it smelled like when it rained, because it has like an oily, an oil on its leaf that is really, really nice. And I think it is native to California. Technically, Anna, some of your questions, when you ask if it's native, technically California natives are referring to the California floristic province, which actually is not just the border of California, the state, and it actually includes a little bit of northern Baja, and people argue over whether it includes a little bit of Oregon or not. But and it actually excludes some of the desert communities. So creosote is like arguably, but it is considered a California native by Theodore Payne standards, because I know Theodore Payne Foundation includes all of California. So it does go out to Arizona, absolutely. And some of these are California natives, but it can be a California native and also grow in other places. So for example, the fescues, there's some fescue grasses or festucas that grow in like all of the Western, or almost all of the Western US, but it's still considered a California native because it's native to our region. So it's not endemic, which means it doesn't only grow in California, but it is native to this region, if that makes sense. So so you can see it in Arizona and California, but creosote would not be considered a California endemic plant, because you do see it in like Sonoran deserts and stuff like that, and even northern Mexico. Wait, did I? Yeah, those are both creosote. I think I double post. Anyway, does anyone know what this one is? I know we have a student more up north in Barstow area, so this is not something you would necessarily find in like Los Angeles, city limits, but yeah, rabbit bush. This one is totally California native and really lovely, like blasting like this bright ass yellow, and kind of flowers around this time of year, if I believe. I'm pretty sure it's about right about now that it's flowering, and really cool plant. I recently a friend sent me a picture from Bishop Bishop, California, and there was a bunch of these. So similar vibe. I think I looked it up, and it's Chrysothamnus nauseosus. So yeah, it has a smell to it. Anyway, more of a high desert plant, this one. Okay, we got two trees. Any ganders, guesses? The one on the left should look familiar-ish. The one on the right, yes, okay, so Hector, you said pepper tree. I'm imagining it's for the one on the right. And then Enna said coast live oak. And yeah, the one on the left looks like an oak. There looks like there's a fallen branch in the middle there, but the rest of it looks like some type of oak. It's hard to know if you can't really see the leaves up close, but I'm just kind of guessing that. And yeah, Hector, I kind of was thinking the same. The photo's not the greatest. It looks almost kind of blurred, but it looks like a pepper tree. And there is kind of a misnomer for the pepper tree they call it the California pepper. It's not actually a native. It's a non-native tree. Yeah, it's naturalized essentially. So it can sprout on its own, and very commonly planted. Obviously it does really well in our climate, and you see it commonly planted in landscapes, but it's not considered a California native. So good to know, because sometimes even that's another thing with the common names, is they can be misnomers for where they're from, or even some of the features about the plant. So if it is a pepper tree, there's like the Brazilian pepper, which has like a bit wider of a leaf, and then there's the California pepper or Peruvian pepper. There's a lot of different common names, and I'm blanking on the scientific names of those, but they have those kind of red peppercorns on them, and they are both non-natives. So though it has the name California pepper in it, it is not a California native. But yeah, maybe you could substitute this oak on the left for some of those, just like take these out on the right, the peppers, and thank you, Laura, Chinese mole. That's the scientific name. Yes, exactly, John. Yeah, it's the California pepper. Some people call it Peruvian pepper because it's from those areas, but I think it's California just because there's so many of them. It's also got that name in it, but it's not native. And actually, the peppers are they're like arguably edible. They are. Some people are really sensitive to the oil in them and can have allergic reaction. But some people eat them fine. I worked at a restaurant for a long time and we used a lot of different plants from different trees, and we had California peppers, and some people in our staff were actually allergic to the peppers and others weren't. So we had to stop using them. But yeah, so they are, yes, edible, but a lot of people have sensitivity to the peppercorns especially from the Brazilian peppercorn. Sorry, yes, the Brazilian pepper tree, but both of them, they're not the standard like red peppercorns that you get from Trader Joe's or whatever. This one you guys should get. This is pretty easy. At least the genus, right? Yeah. Manzanita, Arctostaphylos, lovely red bark. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there's to say about Arctostaphylos. This is obviously a larger shrub, tree one. Yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's anything edible in Manzanita. Shyness is related to sumac. Yes, actually, wait, are you saying that they're the same family, I believe, or something like that? Is that what you were referring to, John?
Yeah, same family, yeah.
Yeah, and because of that, they both there's sensitivity to allergies, I believe, that whole family can be like problematic. But Hector, are you saying the lovely smell for the pepper tree? I'm imagining so, because I don't know if anything else has a smell. But okay, what are we at? 6:55. Okay, there's some grasses in here. Here's a picture of one on the right in the can. I should have told you guys to take pictures in the garden setting, but I totally forgot to. And so you can send pictures of them in the pot. But this is the Spirabolus aeroides, which we talked about, and it has that lovely airy-fairy feathering tip that I really love. And you can see on the left, is this on the left the Spirabolus aeroides or not? If anyone had to take a guess. We did look at the Spirabolus aeroides in the lecture. Did everybody simultaneously fall asleep on the slide of the Spirabolus, maybe? Julio, no, yes, it's not, because it's clearly like, it has a seed head here that's almost like a little firecracker pom-pom on the top. I'm pointing to it as if you guys can see that, but that was really different than that feathery, big plume style of the Spirabolus. So it's definitely not a Spirabolus aeroides, and it looks pretty dry. And if that was taken in summer, I would say it's probably not a warm season grass, because you would expect the Spirabolus to be green in the summer because it's a warm season grass. So just kind of putting the difference there, like the contrast. Any other, I don't know. There's not much more grasses. You can just see the difference. This is like a big moundy kind of fountain type, and the other one on the left, you can utilize it more as like a bunch grass. It's a little more upright. I'm not sure which ones these are. Like I said in the lecture, I'm slow to the, I was slow coming to the grass game. And like essentially, yeah, I can't really identify them without the flowering tips at this point. So yeah, is that deer grass on the right? It looks so floppy and big moundy. But anyway, okay, so deer grass on the right, and on the left, not sure, but you can just see that these are being utilized more like as bunch grasses. And then of course, California poppy, I think that's the last slide I have. I can't tell what the ones are in the background. That'd be cool if anyone knows, but these are obviously wildflowers, so we know they're short-lived. Yeah, Juncus, did you say, I know this one on the left, are you saying Juncus or right Juncus?
The left.
Yeah, okay. Do you know that, or are you not sure? Juncus is actually like a grass-like, so it's not truly a grass, but it is very upright like that. usually they have, like, if they have a seed head, it's a lot easier to identify, but usually they're a bit darker green. I don't know if it's just the photo, but
Yeah, I was just looking the way that it's kind of like very stiff.
yes,
stems,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's, I was wondering that too,
Mhm.
but they're usually a bit thicker and like stiffer, but there's always I'm always wrong. So there's yeah, and it says, and I said, when a plant is better in coastal, is that because of sandy soils and also cooler? Where would these coastal plants be happier in an inland garden? So better in coastal, usually it can mean a couple things. It could be that it's native to a coastal region. So it not only like it kind of wants a mild climate. It doesn't take the extreme temperatures well. So inland we get the heat and sometimes the drop in temperature. So we get the heat and the cold. And sometimes the coastal plants can't hang with that. So that might be why they're recommended as a coastal plant, because they're adapted to that climate and they're not very amenable to other temperatures. And coastal regions typically have a milder climate, as you are familiar with. And not always are they sandy soils on the coast, actually. We associate sand in like the beach, but on the hills and stuff, they can be kind of clayey and not the best drainage. So not necessarily a soil thing, more of, I think, a temperature thing. And even sometimes like truly coastal ones, like there's maritime coastal sage scrub, which is like they can handle salt spray even. Like, you know, they can handle more of the salt water that's in the air. So that can be it. But yeah, usually it's because of the cooler, milder temperatures. So when we say if it's a coastal plant, if it's inland, that higher temp and more extreme temp is going to need to have need to be moderated in some way. So like if you want to put a coastal plant inland, it should have like partial shade or dappled light, or maybe it's protected from the afternoon sun, because the afternoon sun is like kind of the sun that's like maxing out and the most extreme for plants. That's when they like need the rest. So where would these coastal plants be happier in an inland garden? So I would think, yeah, like in an area that's protected from late afternoon sun, or yeah, maybe dappled light or something like that, if that makes sense. Okay, we're hitting 7, and if no one has any other questions, I will stay on as long as there's questions, but we can call it, and you guys have your homework, and we have next class on Tuesday, and that will be the soils class. And what else? I'll stop sharing my screen. We have, what about milkweeds? Hector, what about milkweeds? So milkweeds, great habitat plants, obviously, for monarchs. I think, I'm not sure if there is a milkweed card. There should be, but really great option for a garden. And yeah, great habitat. It does get the aphids on it, but that's kind of part of the cycle, and the worms eat it, the caterpillars, I guess I should say. And so that's just, it's a great habitat plant for monarchs for sure. Unless maybe are there multiple native milkweeds? Showy and narrowleaf are only 2. There are but actually, I'm not sure. I don't have that much knowledge on the milkweeds, but the milkweeds, I know that there are the non-native milkweeds that are more problematic, but the showy and the narrowleaf are at least the most common 2, if not, those are the most common 2 you'll find in the nursery setting, like native plant nurseries. Would I eradicate tropical? You mean the native milkweed, the tropical milkweeds? Yeah, I definitely would not plant them, especially if you have the option. They're not helping the monarchs, the tropical ones. So definitely want to do the native milkweeds.
And would you take them out if they're planted in someone's yard?
Oh, I see what you mean. I mean, I guess I guess that would be a conversation depending on the client. Like if habitat and wildlife, or beneficial insects was really important to them, then I would suggest that. But if they were really attached to it, then I wouldn't suggest it as much, and maybe suggest adding some native milkweeds to it. So it very much depends on the client.
Actually, there's an interesting article that I read recently that people were taking their non-native milkweeds out and putting them into their compost, and they realized that they were putting some of the eggs or whatever, the young ones in the compost and actually killing the monarch. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it's not suggested to rip them out, but just don't plant more.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. Well, it is after 7, so I guess we should wrap this up, and we'll see you guys next week